SpongeBob stared at the test paper, big, red, and wrong, and Mrs. Puff had used permanent marker to circle it, just to make sure he got the point. SpongeBob's heart sank lower than a dropped spatula in a deep fryer. He, the fry cook extraordinaire, had failed boating school. Again. Mrs. Puff tapped her pointy fin on the F. Mr. Squarepants, I am most disappointed. This calls for drastic measures. SpongeBob gulped. What new form of torture awaited him? Extra homework? A pop quiz on anchor chains? I'm assigning you a study buddy, Mrs. Puff announced. SpongeBob sighed with relief. That didn't sound so bad. Maybe Patrick would be free to... It's Patrick, Mrs. Puff finished, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. SpongeBob deflated. This meant double trouble, not double the fun. He needed a new plan. A plan for revenge. Revenge. The word echoed in SpongeBob's head as he stormed through Bikini Bottom. But how could a fry cook like him possibly get back at Mrs. Puff? He passed the Bikini Bottom Police Department, and a thought struck him like a rogue fishing net. He would become one of them. SpongeBob marched into the station, puffing his chest out as far as he could. I'm here to join the force, he declared to the bored-looking fish behind the desk. The officer chuckled. We only recruit the best of the best, kid. You gotta be tough, brave, and able to handle a... He was cut off as SpongeBob accidentally tied himself up with his own arms while trying to look strong. The officer sighed. On second thought, how about the Junior Safety Patrol? SpongeBob was devastated. Junior Safety Patrol? He needed something with more impact. As he dejectedly walked past the dumpster behind the station, he spotted a discarded pamphlet. Join the Bikini Bottom SWAT team. We're not just for show. This was it. This was his chance to show Mrs. Puff who she was messing with. Joining the SWAT team was tougher than making a perfect Krabby Patty. SpongeBob endured grueling training, learning to navigate obstacle courses made of spatulas and dodge flying fish patties. He even mastered the art of camouflage, blending seamlessly into a crowd of jellyfish. His dedication surprisingly paid off. Word of SpongeBob's unorthodox yet effective tactics reached the top. His superiors were impressed by his ability to think outside the bun, so to speak. He quickly climbed the ranks. Soon, SpongeBob, the once hapless fry cook, found himself leading the most elite unit in Bikini Bottom. He was Commander Squarepants, and he was ready to serve some justice, Mrs. Puff style. He gathered his team. His eyes gleamed with purpose. Operation Krabby Patty Caper is a go, he announced, revealing his meticulously crafted plan on a whiteboard. It involved a fake Krabby Patty delivery, SpongeBob's specialty, a diversionary tactic involving a giant inflatable Patrick, and finally the apprehension of their target, Mrs. Puff. The day of the operation arrived, bringing with it a current of anticipation. SpongeBob, cloaked in the shadows of Mrs. Puff's house, felt a pang of guilt. Was this really the right way to handle a bad grade? He pushed the thought aside. He was Commander Squarepants now, and failure was not an option. He gave the signal. Plankton, disguised as a delivery boy, he owed SpongeBob a favor, knocked on Mrs. Puff's door, a steaming Krabby Patty in hand. Just as Mrs. Puff opened the door, the giant inflatable Patrick came bouncing down the street, causing a hilarious commotion. Distracted, Mrs. Puff turned to see the spectacle. Now! SpongeBob and his team emerged from their hiding spots, surrounding Mrs. Puff. You're surrounded, SpongeBob declared, feeling a surge of adrenaline. Mrs. Puff, initially startled, burst into laughter. SpongeBob, is that you? What in Neptune's name is going on? SpongeBob froze. Had she seen through his elaborate plan? SpongeBob's shoulders slumped. His master plan, his revenge, all felt silly now. He explained everything to Mrs. Puff the F, the fear, the feeling of inadequacy. To his surprise, Mrs. Puff didn't laugh or yell. She sighed. SpongeBob, I know you're trying your best, but revenge isn't the answer. How about we try studying together again? This time, without Patrick. SpongeBob felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had gone too far. He learned that day that while getting even might seem satisfying, true happiness came from friendship and understanding. He hung up his SWAT gear for good, realizing that some battles were best fought with a pencil and a good study buddy, even if that buddy wasn't Patrick. As for his brief stint as Commander Squarepants, well, that was a story for another time, preferably one told far, far away from Mrs. Puff.